Episode 9, The Final Confrontation. Kerrington's mind was a whirlwind. She had spent the past week dividing her time between finalizing her divorce papers and trying to pick up the pieces of her broken life. There was a sense of release in signing those papers, a bittersweet relief at the thought of moving on from David. Her marriage had been a comfortable prison for far too long, and now, as she felt the freedom slip into her fingers, she couldn't help but feel something close to peace. But peace was difficult, especially with Marcus simmering in the background, his intentions uncertain, and his anger brewing. With constant text messages and phone calls, one behind the other, Kerrington didn't know what to do. She was really and truly afraid of what Marcus would potentially do. Kerrington and David's once stable life has crumbled, leaving them with no choice but to divorce. After years of shared history, their bond is breaking under the weight of infidelity, betrayal, and secrets too heavy to carry any longer. Olivia, unaware of the full story, has grown close to her biological father, Ethan, and gives that relationship a chance. And as Kerrington steps away from David, she's found solace in Jake, whose constant support has been a lifeline. Seeking peace, she decides to stay with him until the storm of her marriage finally settles. Kerrington sighed, closing the folder that held her legal documents and leaning back in the chair. She decided to stay with Jake temporarily, using his loft as her refuge from the storm raging around her. She didn't know what to do, and she didn't know what she would have done without him. Jake had been her rock, a calming presence in a time when her world seemed determined to unravel. Kerrington arrives at Jake's loft with a suitcase in hand and a heart full of questions. She's choosing a fresh start, hoping to escape the tangled web of the past. Yet, she's unaware of the brewing storm that's about to arrive uninvited. Meanwhile, Marcus brews in frustration, feeling betrayed by Kerrington's distance and consumed by the jealousy he's on the verge of exposing her secrets to the world, convinced that this will bring him justice. But there's one thing he doesn't know. David already knows everything. Kerrington has nothing left to lose with him. "You all right?" Jake's voice pulled her from her thoughts as he entered the room, holding 2 steaming mugs of coffee. He handed one to her, his eyes soft with concern. Kerrington managed a weak smile. "Yeah, I guess I am. It's just so unreal, you know?" He nodded, taking a seat beside her. "I know it's a lot, but I'm here, Carrie. I'll be here as long as you need. I'll be here for you always." He smiled. She took a sip, the warmth spreading through her chest, and she found herself relaxing in his presence. Jake had a way of making her feel safe, something she hadn't felt in a long time. But with Marcus still looming in her life, she knew that safety was only temporary. The memory of Kerrington's betrayal clawed at him, driving him to a place of resentment. He couldn't escape. The woman he once thought belonged to him was slipping away, and she had chosen another man, a man who in his mind could never measure up to what they had shared. That evening, Marcus sat in his dimly lit apartment, a drink in hand, replaying old texts and photos. How had it come to this? How had he lost her so completely? In a surge of impulsive rage, he grabbed his keys and stormed out. Tonight he needed answers. If she was truly choosing Jake over him, she needed to tell him face to face. Unable to contain his anger any longer, Marcus tracks Kerrington down at Jake's loft by locating her location from the device he planted on her car when they initially started their affair. His jealousy and desire for control clouded his gut judgment as he decided to confront her once and for all. Inside the loft, Kerrington and Jake are unaware of the impending danger. Kerrington was caught off guard by a loud pounding on the door. She exchanged a wary glance with Jake, who got up to answer. But as soon as he opened the door, Marcus shoved his way in, his eyes blazing with a fury Kerrington had never seen. "Carrie, we need to talk, now," his gaze darting between her and Jake. "Marcus, this isn't the time or place," Kerrington yelled, feeling her pulse quicken. She hadn't expected this level of anger, and it unnerved her. Jake stepped in, trying to defuse the situation. "Marcus, leave. She doesn't want to talk to you right now." But Marcus wasn't having it. He reached into his coat and pulled out a gun, waving it around in a desperate attempt to assert control. "I don't think you understand, Jake. This is between me and Carrie." Kerrington's eyes widened, her heart pounding as fear clawed at her throat. "Marcus, please, this isn't you. I loved you. And this is how you repay me?" Marcus' voice cracked, the weight of his pain spilling into every word. He looked at her, pleading, desperate. Kerrington held up her hands, trying to calm him down. "I didn't want things to turn out like this. I never meant to hurt you." But before she could do anything, Jake lunged at Marcus, attempting to wrestle the gun from his grip. The two men struggled, each grappling for control, as Kerrington watched in horror. A shot rang out, echoing through the loft. Kerrington screamed, her hands flying, covering her mouth as she watched both men collapse to the floor. She didn't know who had been hit, only that one of them was wounded. "Jake, Marcus," she cried, her voice trembling as she scrambled to her knees beside them. For a heart-stopping moment, everything was silent. Then Jake stirred, slowly pushing Marcus off of him. Relief washed over Kerrington as she realized Jake was unharmed. But Marcus lay groaning, clutching his shoulder where a red stain was spreading across his shirt. Kerrington sighs in relief but remains terrified as she realizes that the gravity of what just happened. Kerrington scrambles to find her cell phone and proceeds to dial 911. The wail of the sirens filled the air as the police arrived and immediately exited their vehicles, running into the loft with all weapons pointed at the men laying on the floor. Kerrington watched, numb, as the officers assessed the scene and restrained Marcus, cuffing him as they led him away. She could see the defeat look in his eyes, the broken man who had once meant so much to her. She turned to Jake, her voice barely above a whisper. "Thank you for everything." Jake wrapped his arms around her, holding him close. "It's over now, Carrie. You're safe." But as she clung to him, she couldn't shake the feeling that nothing would ever be the same. The events of the night had left an undeniable mark on her, a reminder of the fragile line between love and possession, between desire and destruction. Kerrington's heart races, still grappling with the chaos that just unfolded. As the police lights fade into the night, Kerrington and Jake sit in silence, shaken by the events. Their connection has only grown stronger through this ordeal, but the weight of their actions and choices hangs heavy over them. This was a breaking point for Kerrington, a moment that forced her to confront the consequences of her choices. With Marcus gone, David accepting the truth, and Olivia reconnecting with her real father, Kerrington stands at the place of a new chapter. But is she truly free? Or will the shadows of her past continue to haunt her?